Hello, you fantastic people. Welcome back to Borderlands 3, to my first ever grab trap flak build for level 72, of course. As of the level 72 update, the gravity snare active anoint got buffed to 250% weapon damage, which makes this build not only viable, actually really strong, and actually a ton of fun to use. So I had to give it a go, put together the best build I could for you guys so we could all try it out. I'll start with the clips on screen so you guys can see this thing in action. This is a slightly mobbing prioritized build just because Pet does get a bunch of damage from the purple tree itself, but it does really well in bossing situations as well because that anointment is buffing the weapon damage by so much. So honestly, this thing can take on anything in the game. It is DLC 5 dependent because of course you do need the grab trap skill tree to actually build this character, but if you have one of those, not all of the DLCs, it's not dependent on anything else other than DLC 5. As long as you have that, you'll be set up to rock this build. And if you have other DLCs, you'll just have more weapons to choose from to add to this, because there is a huge variety of weapon choices to use right now at Mayhem 10/11 at level 72. As usual, we'll go through all the stuff you guys need to rock this build, including the anointments and the weapons and what situations to use those both in, as well as the level 72 skill tree, plus the gear you guys need like the shields, artifacts, class mods, and grenades. And if you guys are rocking Mayhem 10 still, personally rock Mayhem 11 myself, but I'll suggest the Mayhem 10 modifiers that I would recommend if you're using this build. Starting off with the anointments, like I said, Gravity Snare anoint. While Gravity Snare is active, you get a bonus 250% weapon damage is the one that got buffed and will be the one we're using for, I think, 95% of weapons. I think the only exception is on the Plague Bearers. I left next to mags on there, just so we had a little bit of elemental variance trying to one-shot things with the Plague Bearer. It's a little bit easier if you're being elemental efficient, but everything else we're using Gravity Snare active because it is just so strong, and I think it's currently the best choice. And why not? While the clips are still showing, I'll go through the Mayhem modifiers. I would recommend at Mayhem 10, the easy modifier I usually use is Big Kick Energy. Increases your gun damage, does ruin your accuracy a little bit, but to be honest, the damage is kind of worth it. For medium and hard modifiers, I always use Healy Avenger and Drone Ranger, because by the time you're attacking an enemy, they don't have a chance to heal, they're just wiped from the map, so that Healy Avenger or that drone really isn't going to come into play very often, if at all. And if it does, we're actually doing a lot of splash damage in mobbing situations, so you probably blow them up by accident anyway, so they're not usually a problem. As for the very hard modifier, I would use Buddy System because, like I said, we're doing a fair bit of splash, so you'll be able to take that out very easily. The rest of the modifiers, like Holy Critters, what I usually use for Fadeaway, that's not going to be very helpful if we're not hitting crits all the time because we're using Gravity Snare instead. And the rest are like, you know, Elemental Immunity. I don't want to mess with that. So Buddy System all the way for the very hard modifier. Now, just before we jump into the weapons, Hermie the Raid Boss. If you guys want to take him on with this build, you definitely can. Not quite as quick as Fadeaway Alpha Flak, but definitely still works with 3 different strats you guys are welcome to choose from. The first one, Tizzy with ammo regen via Grav Trap. The Tizzy, of course, has a horrible ammo problem, but is very strong. But with Grav Trap, you can actually keep that thing stocked the whole time. The only problem with it is the COV Tizzy itself is very inconsistent. The reload time on COVs are, you know, sometimes 1 second, sometimes 4 to 5 seconds, and lead to a lot of downs. And also, the Tizzy flatlines fire rate often, and I don't know why, I don't know how to stop it. It's very irritating. I think it's a bug, I don't really know, but it does lead to a drop-off in damage and fire rate, and that again can lead to some downs. It does work, it's inconsistent. Sometimes you get an amazing run and absolutely smash him in record-breaking time, and sometimes you're just constantly getting down yourself and struggling the whole way. The second and first option are a lot stronger though, the next one being the Monarchs, of course high damage weapons, plus you get your action skill back very quickly with them, so you can loop Grav Trap a lot quicker. If you want to pick up it, put it down every, you know, 10-15 seconds, you can loop the Revolter's ability, you can loop your action skill Elemental and do a lot more damage that way. And the top one I would suggest, if you guys want to switch to Fadeaway, because we have enough points in the skill tree of Green Tree, if you want to switch to Fadeaway just for Hermie and chuck on a King/Queen's Call, that's currently the best setup for taking out Hermie in the fastest time, if you guys want, because that thing has lifesteal and a crazy amount of damage. You can take them out, even with this build, in 1 to 2 fadeaways. Sometimes you get it in 1, most of the time you can get it in 2 very quickly, and you won't down anywhere near as much because you have so much lifesteal from that gun. But yeah, those are the 3 options that I would recommend though. Feel free to try them all out and see which one you guys like to use the most. Hopefully the clips did the build justice on screen. Let's get into the weapons though, starting with the prompt critical. This thing is one of the best mobbing weapons in the game. The blast radius on it is huge. You can get it from DLC 4 from Evil Lilith. The Tizzy, like I said, is amazing for taking out bosses. Ammo consumption does hurt it when you're trying to take out mobbing situations, but with Grab Trap ammo regen, you can use it if you guys want to. The OPQ is finally back. This thing is incredible. Pinpoint accuracy does huge amounts of splash though, so you definitely got to stay back from it, but very, very good weapon. The Sandhawks, of course, have just been goated since they've come out pretty much. They do a huge amount of damage. Again, ammo consumption, but again, Grab Trap ammo regen, so it's not really a problem as much anymore. In the backpack, we've got the light shows. Of course, they're just the staple of all builds. Agile, fast fire rate, high damage. The replay and the multi-tap, two very good Atlas pistols. If you haven't tried them, they are fantastic. The multi-tap is both at mobbing and bossing, fantastic. The replay, not great for bossing, but for any situation where there's multiple enemies, tag them all, and the fire rate and damage output on this thing is incredible. The Hellshock and the Radical, two very good melee one pistols. The other one that I don't have is the Beacon, but if you guys want to get any or all three of those, they're all very, very strong. We've got a couple extra Tizzies in here for the backpack, which, by the way, save file is in the description if you guys are on PC and want to check out that. You're more than welcome to. We've also got Maggies. We have the King/Queen's Coils. These are the only ones we have Fadeaway active on, just if you want to switch to Fadeaway for the raid boss. Other than that, you can have Gravity Snare on it if you're using or versing bosses that you can always hit crit shots. For example, Grave Ward. If you always hit the center of his chest, you will be doing a ton of damage and you won't need Fadeaway to use these. The Trick Shot, amazing pistol. Try out that one as well for both mobbing and bossing, honestly. The turrets from Arms Race are very, very strong. The fire rate on this is incredible. Again, ammo consumption isn't as bad as the Tizzy or the Sandhawk, but is pretty bad. So again, Grav Snare, ammo regen comes into play there, and you can keep those stocked up as you're going. The Plasma Coil, Arms Race, high damage, only comes in radiation and shock, but it's very, very good. The Breath of Dying is actually very, very strong in bossing and mobbing situations. There's not that many armored targets in mobbing situations, but for example, you can one-shot the Kraken, the Valkyries, honestly, even Wotan with the little blobs that come out from those. It's incredible. If there wasn't already a clip at the start, I'll show it now. The Chaos Assault Rifle, this thing is awesome. I love it. Pinpoint accurate dial assault rifle, comes in all elemental types. Would definitely recommend trying out that. The Monarchs, of course, are just a staple. Very, very high damage for pretty much any situation. The No Pew Pew is back. This thing, I don't use it as much, but it is very high damage. It's just the COV brand pretty much that holds me back from using it too much, but it is a very good weapon. The Super Shreddifier, honestly, if you just have a regular Shreddifier, it will still work very well. The fire rate on it is insane. Honestly, it did used to be one of the fastest fire rate, but that's only 16 bullets per second, where the SMGs do like 25 now. Still a very good weapon. The Rowan's Coil got buffed recently. If you guys haven't tried it since, it's like the very start of the game when it was super, super strong. It is back and fantastic. The Butchers are 100% balanced, just like Thanos. They totally make sense. Use them though before they get just snapped out of existence. The Hellwalker is fantastic, particularly as flak mains. We love one dinking things in the head with a Jacob shotgun, and the Hellwalker is currently the one to do it with. The Kick Charger, the Backburner, and the Plague Bearers, as well as the Yellow Cake, couldn't fit in the backpack, but all of those are great rocket launchers to use for one-shotting things and clearing the bridges of the melee one takedown. The Skull Masher is the only other sniper I have in here. It's my favorite Jacob's one. Crazy fire rate. You can now control the recoil and does a ton of damage. Would highly recommend. Now, as for the gear, starting with these shields, if I'm going to be honest, I use the Revolter for everything. If I get the choice for increased damage by any amount but reduce survivability, or crazy amounts of survivability but only reducing my damage a little bit, I'll choose damage every day of the week. I don't care if I down 10 times in takedown, as long as I'm doing the highest amount of damage I can, which is currently done by the Revolter. You get 200% extra shock damage whenever the shield is broken, and an extra 50% fire rate, which is insane. But if you chuck on action skill start, you get that every time you start your action skill or break your shield. Either or, it's very, very strong. I would highly recommend it. If you guys want to loop this more often, it only lasts for 15 seconds. You can pick up your Grav Trap early, get your action skill cooldown back very quickly via multi-pellet weapons, and then chuck it back down to keep that ability up all the time. It's goated. If you don't have the Revolter or would prefer to use survivability over the damage, the stopgap, you can get huge capacities on it. You can also chuck the same Anoint on and be immune for 5 seconds at a time. That's also very, very nice. And you can also use Old Gods. These now have a dedicated drop. If you guys haven't heard, it drops from Elena from DLC 2, and it is very, very good for increasing your elemental damage. Plus, you can chuck on elemental ASCs at the bottom there, so on action skill end, you'll do more elemental damage. Moving over to grenades, cloning Hunter Seekers all the way unless you can get Mitosis. They are rarer, but better, and also chuck on all your elemental ASCs that you can get, so you can stack up your elements to be more efficient against whatever enemy you are fighting. As for class mods, bounty hunters all the way for those, unless you have a very good stalker for mobbing situations, like the one you can see on the right there is very, very good for shotguns. But everything else, I'm using a bounty hunter, and most of them are underleveled. So if you have underleveled class mods but with very good passives, keep them. They're likely better than most higher level ones. I think I managed to find these 3 here are level 72. The rest are underleveled ones. So if you have any good ones from old level caps, keep them. They are still your best options. As for artifacts, I'm rocking the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge in most situations. I currently don't have them in here, but I also have Company Men. If you have very, very good Company Men, they can actually be better or the same amount of damage as the Pearl, but you have to carry a lot around because you have to switch between whatever weapons you're using. As for base game, we've got Snowdrift Victory Rush. That's also very good. I actually use this for my Plague Bearer because I don't have a tall Company Man yet, but until I get that, Victory Rush is also a very good option. And I also keep a cut personal launch pad on me for ammo regen. Not as necessary anymore, if at all, because we do have the Grab Trap ammo regen. Speaking of, let's get into the level 72 Grab Trap skill tree build. Starting off with Gravity Snare, that is going to be our action skill. Essentially throw a gravity trap on the ground and it knocks enemies up in the air. For augments, we're using Forage. That essentially, whenever enemies are knocked in the air, they drop ammo, health boosters, and shield boosters. That's where we get a crazy amount of ammo back. You can actually fill up your whole pistol stock with maximum SDU bank. I think it's 1,200 pistol bullets. You can pretty much get from one drop. Like, it's that strong. And then on top of that, we are using Wide Net, essentially increasing the radius and duration of the ability. The duration in particular is quite good because you can have your anointment up for longer. As for skill points spent, we put 5 points into agility training, increasing our reload speed by 40%. That's just quality of life and just nice to have, to be honest. 5 points in Gotta Go Fast, increases Flak's pet movement speed and damage by 35% and 40%. Like I said, pet's going to be quite tanky in this build, so it's going to help with our mobbing situation. 3 points in Throat Ripper. It is essentially Megavore, but for pet, which is really nice, increases damage and helps later on. 1 point in Combat Veterinarian. This is lifesteal. Whenever Flak's doing damage, will heal Pet, which you would think would be busted, which it is in many situations, but for some reason, Pet still goes down. I don't know if it's a bug, I don't know if Pet's downing himself, or if it's a level 72 scaling thing, but it is going down every once in a while, which is unfortunate, so definitely put the 1 point in here. It will save him in most of those situations. 1 point in Take This, it puts a copy of Flak's shield on Pet, which is very nice. You can mess around with Nova shields if you guys want to with this. I honestly just put it on here to increase its damage because, again, I'm still going to choose the Revolter at the moment. 5 points in Monkey Do. Essentially, whenever Flak's pet hits a critical hit, Flak's next shot will have a bonus 70% damage, which happens more often because we have Throat Ripper equipped with 3 points. And it's actually very, very strong depending on what weapon you're using. The Hellwalker is a great example of where it's going to shine the most because you're not shooting very often and you're one-dinking things, and that will definitely make sure it happens with an extra 70% of damage. Whereas something like a Monarch or a multi-pallet high fire rate weapon like the Light Show, you're not going to see that increase in damage that often because it's only happening on one shot, which isn't as strong. It's not built to be the one-shotter machine. If you know what I mean. 2 points in Fuzzy Math. This thing is fantastic for multiple different reasons. For survivability, is essentially lifesteal for Flak shields, but it's really good if you're using the Revolter. One, because if you're in a situation where you're taking a lot of damage and then breaking your shield regularly, like the raid boss, you're going to be regenning your shield and proccing the Revolter's ability like all the time and keeping the ability up all the time. But it also keeps you alive because you literally have shield regen, which is pretty much Flak's. By pretty much, I mean literally Flak's only lifesteal of any kind. which is very nice. I only have 2 points in here. I spent the other points in damage, but if you want, you can put more points in here, take some damage out of the other trees if you would like. Moving over to green tree. This is a very little awkward build for the green and the blue trees, but starting off with this one, 5 points in furious attack, increase damage whenever you shoot things, which is nice. 5 points in overclock, increases your fire rate, and then again after reloading. 3 points in turn, tail, and run is health regen and damage reduction while moving, gun damage and fire rate while standing still. So try and stand still when you're trying to take on bosses. 1 point in lick the wounds essentially means Flax Pet can revive you, which is always good because you're down to stupid barrels or mayhem water or just dumb stuff all the time. So make sure Pet can pick you up in those situations. 1 point in eager to impress because we solely had to get down to this row because we have to unlock Gunslinger Jabba. It is the best pet for bossing situations. He just stacks frenzy better, whereas Loaderbot gets kind of slow at doing it. So we put the points down here so we can get to Gunslinger Jabba, and we moved over to Blue Tree, which again is a very awkward amount, but hear me out. 3 points in Persistent Hunter increases your gun damage and action skill duration, which again is very nice for a Gravity Snare annoyance. 2 points of Ferocity, buffing Pet's weapon damage again, and then 2 points in Frenzy. A very awkward amount being 2 points, but it is still 16% damage there from just 2 points spent, and Pet will be able to keep that stacked all the time, depending on your class mods, because as you know, bounty hunters can have a frenzy on them. Not a lot of mine do, unfortunately, but for example, that one has 4. So you can buff it even more and make sure that the Gunslinger Jabba stacks that for you before going into a boss fight situation and going in with a lot more damage. Whereas the loader is for mobbing situations and doing a ton of damage himself. Moving over to a red tree, 3 points in Leave No Trace. You get bullets back in the mag once you hit a critical hit, which of course happens all the time. 5 points in Interplanetary Stalker is a hunt kill skill. Whenever you kill an enemy, you get some bonus damage there. 5 points in Hunter's Eye, you get all of those bonuses there against those particular enemies, plus all of those bonuses against all bosses because we're using the Bounty Hunter class mod. 3 points in Head Count, when you hit a critical hit, you get action skill cooldown rate, which is all the time. 3 points in Big Game, it increases your hunt skill duration and skill effects. Hunt skills include Most Dangerous Game, Interplanetary Stalker, Furious Attack, and Frenzy, all very strong sources of Flax powers, and you're just buffing them by putting 3 points in there. 3 points in Most Dangerous Game. We have an extra 3 from our class mod, which is the Perfect Roll. It is another hunt skill, which increases your gun damage, crit damage, pet damage, and handling for 120 seconds just for killing a badass enemy, which in things like the melee one takedown probably happens like 10 to 15 times in a 2-minute period. So that is very easy to keep up and a very good amount of damage. 1 point in Galactic Shadow. Very cheap, 15% critical hit damage there. Add 2 points in Grim Harvest. I consider putting in Two Fang, but for this build, we are actually buffing Pet's damage a lot, so I chose a little bit more pet damage, being 14%, gun damage by 6%, and 20% action skill damage isn't being used in this build, unfortunately. Then 1 point in Megavore, one of Flax's best skills, hitting a critical hit 20% of the time, no matter where you hit the enemy in the body, is very, very good for damage, getting your action skill cooldown rate, as well as Leave No Trace, putting bullets back in the mag all the time. It's very, very strong. And that's the level 72 grab trap flak build. I really love putting this one together for you guys. I hope you found it helpful or enjoyable. If you did, don't forget to smash subscribe, click that like button down below. Both are free and help me out a bunch, and I very much do appreciate it. Other than that, we have a Twitch we stream to every night, and we also have a Discord with awesome people. Both you can find down below in the description. Other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. See you guys next video and a live stream. Till then, adios.